In this video, I'm back again with another modular system that uses my dungeon rails. This time, I'll be showing you guys how to create thin, modular wattle and daub walls. So let's jump in. The system is built around 4 main wall segments: inner and outer corners, and male and female wall pieces. Using this technique, you can create a lot of variation, making fantastic looking cottages or taverns. I'm going to start this project by milling out foam. And starting with those straight wall segments, we're going to need 1 1/4 inch by 2 inch by 1/4 inch pieces and 3/8 by 2 inch by 1/4 inch rods for our top plates. Corner pieces are made up out of 1 inch by 1 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch block, 5/8 by 1 3/4 by 1/4 inch block, and corner posts made up by 3/8 by 3/8 by 1 3/4 inch rods. The final note for preparing the foam: you want to make sure that you texture both your corner posts and your top plates. I used the wire brush method. Now that we have all of our foam prepped, I'm gonna go ahead and cut out the cardstock that's gonna be our wall panels. For me, I'm gonna cut them using a Cricut. And if you're a member of the Fantastic Factory, you can find all my plans on Design Space on Patreon. But if you're not a member yet, down in the project overview, I provided stencils to try to make this a little easier on you. With all that out of the way, we can get to the most enjoyable part of a craft for me, the construction. Starting with the straight wall sections, I'm gonna take the insulation foam, glue it down to those 2 inch wall panels, and I'm gonna make sure that there's a channel that it can sit perfectly over my dungeon rails. I'm gonna do the same exact thing for the exterior corners, but make a small exception when it comes to the interior ones. Here I'm gonna be combining the 5/8 by 3/4 inch and the 1 inch by 1 1/4 inch with its corresponding wall panel, the 1 5/8 by 1 3/4 cardstock. But before adding both the sides, I'm gonna place a T25 staple connector within the segment like you see me doing here. This is going to ensure that the interior corners have a good solid connection with the rails. Next, I'll add the corner post to all my corner segments, both the interior and exterior ones. And although this tip might sound a little dumb, be sure to leave the channel side open on those interior corners. I did ruin more than one corner not paying attention on this step, so yikes. For my 2 inch straight wall segments, I'm going to go ahead and add the top plate at this stage. But for the interior and exterior corners, I'll first mark them at 1 3/8 or 2 inches before cutting them with a miter box and hobby saw, then attaching them to the top. Now that all of our wall segments are roughed out, we need to add the rest of the timber beams. And I started this by cutting a whopping buttload of coffee stir sticks to 1 3/4 inch in length. And yeah, that is a scientific measurement. I'm going to use all of those to become the vertical beams. And when placing them, I'm going to make sure to make the male connections, which hide the seams. I place them to overlap the female sections by roughly 1/16 to 3/32 of an inch. This ensures that the seams are mostly hidden, and it keeps the walls aligned vertically, but it also applies enough surface area to where I glued it down that I don't have to worry about them breaking off. For the female straight wall sections, the baseboard is 3/16 shy of 2 inches and placed center on both sides. The male straight wall segments are made up with the vertical beams only on one side, but not both sides. The walls can easily be flipped in orientation, making it the most versatile solution that I could come up with. For both corner pieces, I finished the baseboard by working organically. This is simply done. All I did was measure, cut, glue, repeat. Next, I recommend reinforcing all the cardstock on all the female sections. To accomplish this, I relied on super glue. This step is to prevent the chipboard from becoming frayed. And I suggest that you do better than me. Do this step before you start painting. The last step before we can move to painting is to add some texture to the walls. There's a lot of techniques out there on how to add that plaster-like look to the walls, and I really wanted to find something that doesn't add a lot of volume. All I did to achieve this was to actually paint on a layer of tacky glue and let it dry. I found that personally, that had a realistic look, but also didn't add a whole lot of volume to the walls. Now, some of you out there are probably thinking to yourself, Wattle and Daub walls don't have plaster. And I would say that that can be true, probably in the poorest of areas, or by someone who didn't know what they were doing. If that wall was whitewashed, they certainly didn't whitewash dirt. And honestly, the first time it rained for 3 days, you would have such giant holes in your wall that it has to be protected in some way. And I'm not a historian, but I'm pretty sure that they used some kind of plaster probably derived from clay. And now that I finished this one-sided debate that's borderline schizophrenic with all of you, let's move on to painting. Painting these wall segments was easy. I started by mimicking the whitewash with a cheap titanium white acrylic paint on all the plaster sections. And I simply decided to add damage as I went using my knife and a clay sculpting tool. Next, I mixed Mod Podge, water, chocolate brown, and gave the exposed foam a once over. Before going over all the wood and the foam again with the same chocolate brown. I dry brushed the wood with coffee latte and then an antique white before moving on to washes. I started with a yellow wash over all the plaster. If you're curious about what goes into these oil washes, I covered that on the floor tile video, link will be down below. Then, after that was dry, I hit the whole thing again with a black and burnt umber wash that I pre-mixed into a Dixie cup. After the final wash was dry, I gave it all a matte clear coat and these wall segments were finished. In this video, I didn't cover the doors or the windows. The templates are in the project overview and the techniques I used are in previous videos. And that's gonna be everything for this one. I'd like to thank all my amazing patrons, especially Michael, who's been pledging at the shop foreman level. Thank you. If you don't know what dungeon rails are, how they're made, or why I made them, the link should be popping up somewhere over here. Hit like, subscribe, ring the dinner bell, and until next time, keep all your fantasy fantastic.